Welcome to the next episode of the Corporate Elephant. And in this episode, I have Laura with me, another strengths coach. I'm so happy that we get to talk about strengths. And our topic today is really how well do you know you? Because that's a massive elephant in the room, right? Laura, do you want to introduce yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. So I'm Laura, and what do? I help leaders use their strengths better to influence others and to make better decisions that impact their people, their business, and their life. And when it comes to what we know about ourselves and what we do, I thought that after 25 years of leading and elevating leaders and teams around the world, I'd absolutely nailed it. And I knew exactly what it took for people to thrive. But then 9 years ago, here in Dubai, I had a shattering accident. I was a runner, hit by a car, thrown 30 feet, smashed my entire body, huge implications with that. And it really challenged everything I thought I knew about thriving. And so, really, 9 years later, 20 surgeries later, now almost not yet completely rebuilt, but getting rebuilt with titanium, it actually made me realize that a lot of the things we think we know about ourselves, we don't know very well at all. And so I took a lot of time apart from working to study resilience and to learn about how important our strengths are. And that's really what I've learned now, and to kind of elevate those to thrive better. And obviously that's why I do what I do. It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. And you have a fascinating story, Laura. So really hats off in front of you,
Yes.
because we had a conversation about it, resilience, that we teach
Yeah.
resilience, but we don't really understand resilience. What make us naturally resilient and just keep going, that forward thinking, that keeps us going. And that's
Yeah,
missing.
and if I say on that, actually, this is one of the scary things because, when we talk about resilience, people have a tendency to think that, oh, if I think positive and I practice gratitude, somehow I'm going to bounce back. But you know what? When we're really challenged and we're really stressed and we're not in our comfort zone of clarity of thinking, it's really, really hard, and there's no bounce. It is really about having the right strategies to know you can rely on time after time, and knowing, how you react to things and how you do things so that you can elevate that to help yourself. And that's what I was doing, but, I didn't realize. So it's learning, and resilience is so possible. But I think it's a bit of a buzzword. And I think people don't always take the time to understand what it really means and how it works for them. I think COVID
Exactly.
frightened us all in that respect. I think it pulled us all up and made us rethink about resilience.
Yes, sometimes the unfortunate events in our lives, they create a really positive outcome in one way or another. The byproduct
Yeah.
it can be very positive. So, and it all ties into self-aware. And we know that self-aware leaders, what gives leaders competitive advantage, right? And it's also another buzzword, self-awareness, right? Because what does it really mean? What do I need to know about myself? And we know that self-awareness has multiple domains. You have personality, you have strengths, you have behavior, feelings, emotion. I mean, you name it. Even just being self-aware about your triggers. Last time I had a conversation
Yeah.
with a friend.
Yeah.
I'm very good at, I know my triggers. And when I hear certain things, I tend to walk away. I don't even go into that conversation because I don't know yet how to handle them. So I
Yeah.
know that it's going to trigger me, but I don't know how to handle. So these are the kind of self-awareness that we want from leaders, from everybody, right?
Yeah.
To develop. And there are two types of self-awareness also that people don't understand. And we tend to use emotional intelligence, IQ, self-awareness, everything, you put it in a mix, it's a mixed bag of trick, really.
Absolutely.
And then, oh, just pick one and we work with that and we are doing the same thing. So self-awareness is two different types. One of them is internal, that is really represents and how we see our values, our passion, our environment, how we react emotionally, in terms of behavior. What is our natural response to certain things? And it also it's very interesting because Harvard Business Review did a lot of studies. Obviously, they are really good at that. They found that the internal self-awareness is associated with higher job and relationship satisfaction, personal and social control, happiness, and it negatively related to anxiety, stress, and depression.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
It's for me it's
Mm.
beautiful just even
Yeah.
to understand that if I know myself,
Yeah.
then I don't need to work on not to be anxious. I don't need to work on not to be, have tendency to depression and stress. But it's really, I know that the environment is going to throw a lot of awful things at me, just like, for example, your accident. But how am I going to deal with it? What do I have? What are the tools in my
Toolkit.
toolbox?
Yeah.
Right. And then the second one is external one, and that is also beautiful because I think it's not just the Harvard Business Review related it to leadership, but I think we can all use them in private life, right?
Yep.
Friends and family and all that. That knowing how others perceive us, and that's very, very important. And the study shows that leaders who understand how others see them, they are much better leaders, they are much reliable, and they are much closer to their employees. So how do we really know ourselves? Do we know ourselves, Laura?
Well, that's a very interesting thing. And for anybody who's here listening to us now, I've got a bit of a game. If you would bear with me, because I love games and I like to do things to get people up and going. So if you're sitting and listening to this, just a few things to think about is, does this sound like you? So if it does, you can just stick your hand up in the air just for yourself so you know if it's you or not. So put your hand up if you are somebody who talks to people in elevators, in aeroplanes, on trains, in grocery stores, in fact, anywhere you go, put your hand up. If you like things that are well organized, maybe labeled or color coded, and you can't relax until everything is in its place. Oh, God. Are you somebody who writes a to-do list and sticks to it even at the weekends? God, I'm terrifying.
Sometimes.
Are you somebody who needs to pick someone to race against when you're driving? I do know lots of people that
I
are.
do know lots of people.
Are you somebody who can guess the plot of a movie faster than anybody else? No, no. My husband's terrific at that. In fact, by 5 minutes, I think, oh no, you spoilt it for me. You've guessed it. And one more thing. Are you somebody who pushes an elevator button more than once to remind it that you're waiting? So the thing is, what are you beginning to see about yourself? All these tell us little traits about things we do. And they're often things we do without even thinking, right? Because I think in our lives, we get so busy doing, don't we? We are always so active. We take on so much. We wear many different hats, specifically if we're leaders. And we're kind of on this, almost like this ring or treadmill going round and doing stuff, but we don't often take time to step off a minute and give ourselves time to think about who we are, what we need to be at our best, the things that trigger us, the things that motivate us, and where we give our best value. So this is something I think we hope that we would be talking about today is, why do we make the choices we do? What do we mean when we say strengths and weaknesses? I mean, these are also words that are buzzed around, but often when I ask people are not really sure what their strengths are exactly. But you can guarantee, if I say, do you think you know what a weakness is? Oh my days, people have lists and lists of the things they can't do. And by the way, they're not all weaknesses. Some things we're just not talented in, and we don't need to be talented in everything. So I think it's really good that today we're going to have that opportunity to move those things back and forth and explain them a bit better for people.
Absolutely. And let's start it by defining strengths and weaknesses for everybody, right? Because that's very, very important. Do you want to do that?
Yes, I can do. So the thing is, a strength. I mean, let's take this back and say, we can be good at many, many things. Okay, we can learn if we have a growth mindset, as we hear. We can learn almost anything if we want to. But the difference is, a strength is usually something that energizes us. It tends to be something, we're all born with a predisposition to be better at some things than others, yeah? Some things that we instinctively do better, faster, we love to do, we just happen to be better than others at it. And there's no rhyme or reason why. It's just what we're attracted to. And the more we do it, the more we enjoy it. Energizing. That is a strength, okay? So it's not just a learning, it's something we love and we get really great results from when we're using it, okay? In the most times.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about weaknesses. Not everything we do is a weakness. If I can't draw, for example, I can. But if I couldn't draw, that's not a weakness. It's just a non-talent for me. But a weakness is something that actually gets in the way of our success. It stops us doing what we should be doing well. So, for example, if I was working and I know that something I need to do work-wise is being sent to me on a what you call it, one of these gone out of my head, on a spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, spreadsheets for me are not a favorite thing, and I look at that and think, oh my god, data, and my head just kind of thinks, oh no, really, and I could feel that depleting. Now that's because I don't love it. Okay, it's not a strength to sit and work through those things, but it's not a weakness that I don't like it unless I need to use that to achieve something I need to do, and I deliberately put it off, procrastinate, do it wrong, or make a mess of it. And it means that I don't get the result I want because I didn't utilize that particular resource because I don't like it. Now that becomes a weakness because I've let it change or have a negative impact on
Mm-hmm.
something I'm trying to achieve. So, not everything is a weakness in our life, but we need to figure out what things do hold us back and to recognize that we actually have strengths, talents that we can utilize to get around some of those things and to mitigate those weaknesses. So, we don't have to love them, but we can find ways to either recognize that we need perhaps to rely on somebody to help us, that we need to learn something to support us, that we can get rid of it completely, or we look at ways to manage or to mitigate around that situation. Yeah. Did you have anything
Absolutely.
to add to that?
Yes, so I define strength and weaknesses the same way as you do, and I always ought to both strengths and weaknesses. Yes, they do energize you, and weaknesses very often is not that I don't like it. Sometimes we are extremely good at our weaknesses, those activities that really just weakens us, drains the living life out of us, we are really, really good at. And people, how we manage our weaknesses also, and I noticed it on myself, it's sometimes it comes across as strengths. And I'll give you an example. I hate reports. I'm analytical, so I love data. I really do love data. But I hate the reporting. Corporations, end of the month, you have to produce 15 to 20 reports because left, right, center, you need to start sending what you have produced during the month. And I hate that period because it's not me. I don't like to sit at the desk and dealing with spreadsheets and all that. Give me the data, I can absorb that, but doing it. And because I hate it so much and it takes my energy away, and I'm not even very good at it, to be honest. I can produce data, but it's very basic. But all you can hear from me towards the end of the month is reporting time. I'm going to do my reports. 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 And everybody thinks that, oh, Sylvia loves reports. I close my office door. I'm in my own thing. But that's how I manage it. I want to get it out of the way so I don't need to look at it ever again until the next month and month end comes. So how we manage these weaknesses, and also It's fascinating because what you said, that how we manage around, and also for weaknesses, that even your strengths can become your weakness very quickly.
Absolutely. Yes. And I think that's it. This all comes down to volume control, doesn't it? I think sometimes, I look at it, I think we've both been talking about this whole thing on perhaps strengths and energy and where we feel great and what we do with that. And I think there are times that we get so wrapped up in enjoying something that we're doing, perhaps. We're not looking as to whether we're getting an effective outcome from it. Yeah. I mean, I know that, sometimes one of my strengths is maximizer. And maximizer is obviously, is partly seeing talent in things and wanting to improve talent. And it's also saying, good isn't good enough. Let's make it
Mm.
fantastic. But when it's dialed up to the top degree, it's perfectionism. And it's all about, is this good enough? Let me tweak it. Let me do a bit more. Oh, perhaps I better rewrite it. Oh, let's add this. And I'm ultimately wasting a huge amount of time, sometimes doing things that are not really necessary. And that's when it's just not effective. And I've got to say, whoa, stop, Laura. 80% good to go. Back off and let it work for you. So, these are little times when they kind of go into overdrive. And do you have Achiever in yours as well?
Yes, I do.
So do you not find that, we can get so busy doing and doing and doing? And I think we both have activator, which is let's get cracking, let's make it happen. That we sometimes forget that actually we can stop.
Yeah.
There's a button that says turn off now, sit and relax. Well, I seem to forget that button and I'm energized by doing more and ticking off more and finding more. And you think, it's actually sometimes it's not sensible. It's not good for us. We all need to decompress and unwind. Yeah. And I think
Absolutely.
that can be a lot of people I see with those strengths that kind of go into overdrive.
Yeah, that's not a good thing. I think we all fall into that, right? That strength is just so in your element that, with my intellect and input and learn in my top three. For me, you give me, I love research. And when I was studying, I can research one topic and it's 12 hours later. I haven't had lunch. All I did, I went to the toilet and I drank some water, but nothing else. The house is in a mess, but I'm not interested. I can complete it. And these are the signs, these are the activities that people can pay attention towards,
Yes.
identifying what is it that I'm good at? What is it that I'm drawn into, like automatically? What is it that I'm doing when I'm in the flow? And really everything else just cease to exist. What are those activities? So are you a learner? Do you like studying? Why do you like studying? And sometimes you ask during the game that are you the person who talks to everybody in the supermarket? And my communication is on the bottom, so I'm not a communicator. However, it's so funny how my strengths, and this is how we can start talking about how you can manage them, right? And not to feel inadequate in any of those, because your strengths can be deployed to benefit and balance those bottom five out.
Yeah.
So for communication, I would not talk to anybody, but I'm a learner and I'm an intellect in terms of my strength. So when I see somebody with the book, I always ask, what's the book about? That's information for me. That's something I'm learning. So that would create or trigger me to have conversation with others. And I'll give you another example, and I didn't think about it until yesterday when I was preparing. Um, During my birthday in January, I asked my friends, can you please send me a 30 seconds video? What you love and what you hate about me. It's like a very easy strengths activity, right? And almost everybody said that you are the best conversationalist. I can talk about everything. Give me a topic and I will talk about it. And communication, and it would indicate for somebody, Sylvia is a really good communicator, right? I'm not. But what triggers my communication is the information, like input. Give me, I can, and because I have that ability to absorb insane amount of information, I make a really good conversationalist. I can talk to everybody.
And that's brilliant. And in the same respect as you're mentioning that, one of the things I come across often when I'm working with leaders, and I bet you do as well, we've had this whole talk about empathy. We need to be more empathetic as leaders. And I get a lot of leaders that come to me and say, oh, I'm really good at getting stuff done, but you know what? I'm not good at the empathy thing. I'm rubbish. I can't build relationships. And I think, but you're
Mhm.
married and you have friends and you have family. So you do build relationships. How is it? What is it that you do to build them? So, for example, when we talk about things that are right at the bottom for us, empathy is right low down for me. And I honestly thought that having gone through such horrendous accident and, 20 surgeries, that I would have a deep empathy with anyone who was going through issues. But apparently I don't. And what I've learned is, one, because I've learned that I don't, but it doesn't mean that you can't build compassion. So you've just got to think, what is it you do to help yourself in that state? Now, I have, relator, which means I'm very good on one-to-one. I
Mhm.
have woo, which you could probably guess. And I have includer. And all those
Mm.
things make me more aware of people around me. And I think when it comes to compassion, building compassion, perhaps as an influencer and executor as such, I can get a bubble of frustration when I ask somebody to do something, say, oh, I'm not sure if I've got it. I don't know if I can. And I think, no, just because I would do it differently, I've got to think, now this is low for me, but because I know that, I've actually taken out that little empathy card in my head and said, come on, Laura, think. And so I have a tendency now, rather than just think, oh, just try and go do something, don't bug me. I turn that around and say, tell me, what do you need from me to help you?
Mhm.
Where is it that you feel challenged? And that way, we can get to it, deal with it, sort it out, and they feel I've been compassionate, and I feel I've found a way through to help them do what they need to do. So we can all build compassion. I don't like using this word empathy as we do it nowadays, because empathy is a strength. You've either got a natural connection to someone where you feel what they feel, or you don't. But if you don't, it's okay. It's just, how do we build compassion, and we can all do it.
Oh my God, I couldn't agree with you more. And I've been talking about it for years because what it really gives these messages in corporations, right? And even in private life that, oh, you need to be an empathetic leader. And people are struggling because, as you said, I'm either empathetic or I'm not. And what it does, it makes them inadequate. And they go like, I don't have it. What am I supposed to do? And they struggle and struggle and struggle and struggle. And I also had senior leaders coaching during our sessions that they don't have empathy. I don't have empathy. It's in the bottom. But if
Yeah,
you ask people, they will be like, it's impossible. Sylvia always cares about others. And for me, this is how I explain it to leaders.
yeah,
There are two types of empathy, affectionate empathy and cognitive, right? So you either feel you connected naturally to other people as how they feel, or you can cognitively connect and understand that problem. And I think this is what you said, that okay, tell me cognitively, I can help you. I might
yeah,
not be able to connect with you, but how do I show that I actually care about
yeah.
people? Because this message that, oh, you don't have empathy, this is the worst message, because we
It
all
is.
have, unless we are a psychopath, that
Yeah,
which is not very common in the population. So we all have empathy, but also we have empathy for different things as well. And once I had a leader with a lot of influencing team in his top 10, but no relationship building. And he was told that he's not very empathetic. However, guess who was speaking up for everybody?
yeah. Yeah, exactly. But you know what? I think this is such an important thing to be talking about now, because, you know, at the moment there's so much. I go to a lot of speaking events and various different things, and I speak at events too, and there's a lot going on about obviously digital transformation right now. And we talk about AI and automation, and people who say, well, if a lot of our work is going to get automated, what skills should we have? Well, obviously, apart from the fact that we all need to get a bit more comfortable around technical procedures and technical things, obviously what's going to matter more are the things that we can do that AI can't do yet.
Mm.
And that is around the whole emotional piece, the building of relationships, the compassion, the intuition. These are all the things that really matter. And I think it's very important for people who feel that relationship building is not their strength, is to be able to say, actually, it can be, but just it doesn't have to be. There's not one linear way of doing it. And it's understanding how we show up and do things, and where we've been successful in the way we've built relationships or we've done something, is to look and study the successes, not the weaknesses, to look at our successes and say, what did we do and how can we replicate that? Because that's where we're going to be able to manage it better. And I think this is a way it's really important, because obviously, these soft skills, as we call them, are now even more important the more AI comes in to automate some of the standard stuff that we do.
I think human beings are being taken out of organizations, and I had many people saying the same to me. HR processes is all about processes. There is
Yeah,
nothing personalized. There is no personalized approach, and I've seen that many, many times in organization that we are not studying human beings' successes. And I love that kind of approach, because I had a colleague, and I tell you something, what we do, and that was a very clear example, what we do to people in organizations. And I'm sure you have millions of examples as well. So there is this HR colleague. She's extremely good with data, payroll, everything that is system related.
yeah,
Now, don't ask her to talk to people, because then you will receive a complaint.
yeah, yeah,
she she is not a people, or people person. And so I told her many, many times, and we had this conversation. So the HR director says, oh no, she needs to improve her people skill so she can be a good HR manager one day, or HR director. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I would take a different approach to this. I'm like, she's extremely good at what she does. There is no mistake in, thousands of people's payroll. It's a massive data she was handling. And she was very highly competent in that. I'm like, why don't we invest in her development as a comp and benefits professional? So
yeah,
pushing her towards that rather than HR aspect, which is the people aspect that they wanted to.
yeah,
And she was like, no, 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 she needs to learn how to deal with people. Guess what? The person left.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is why it's so important to understand where our strengths are. I mean, obviously, in any job, we're never going to have an opportunity to do everything that's just our strengths. But it is about getting the balance right and knowing that, I for many years, one of the things I did is I studied appreciative inquiry. And this is really about looking at successes, because often we tend to muddle around in weaknesses, and we try and spend so much time about what's not working and what's not working and why it's not working. um, and honestly, if we knew what those answers were, we'd probably change them, right? Because no one wants to do what's not working. We want to get it right. So, what's perhaps more important, and this is what I love about appreciative inquiry, is say, look, let's not look at why things don't work at the minute. Let's put that on the side, and let's say, what have we done in the past that did work? And what were we doing when that happened? And let's look at those behaviors and the choices we made. What did that look like? And how did we all contribute to that?
Mhm.
And then say, right, there's our starting point. How can we use those positive things to build on where we have the gaps right now? And how can we use that to get to where we want to be. And it's far more effective because, as you and I have had many conversations, we know that we're naturally born pre-wired to stay away from things that are threatening to us, that we don't like, that throw us out of our space of, well, not just comfort, but what we know. We want to go towards protecting ourselves, towards the things that are rewarding for us. So when we talk about what's gone wrong and why things are wrong and what are failures and what are weaknesses, we see that as kind of inner threats, and it closes our mind, and it's quite hard when that happens to kind of think more positively and more openly. But when we connect our minds to things that have been successful for us and things that have gone well, it's rewarding for us because it makes us feel good, and it allows us to have a more open mindset and to think more creatively on ways in which we could solve things. I think we've had this conversation lots of times, haven't we?
Yes, we had, and I use this principle as well, not only for, and I'm going to come to strengths-based feedback, for example, in organization. It would be so great if we had that kind of approach. But I use this principle when people, you find yourself sometimes with employees, they just complain, oh, this is not working, this is not working, this is not
Yeah,
working.
yeah,
Because our
100%.
mindset is really this deficiency mindset. We spend our lives in school
Yeah.
around people that they really, or they could pinpoint and highlight what is not working. So I use this, and when I find a person and I maybe guide or coach, it's just a conversation, I ask this question: okay, give me three things that works for you right now. And they are thrown off by this comment.
Completely agree with that.
Okay, give me, and you can use this in your marriage, because you argue, you fight, or whatever it is with your friends, or when you
Yeah.
want to solve a problem, instead of looking at, going into conversations, what didn't work in the past, doesn't work in here, why it wouldn't work in the future, and because of you and you and you. How can we have a conversation when you have destroyed my character in the past, in the present, and even going to the future? So this approach, what is not working, let's turn it around. And even with in couples, relationship. Okay, there are things that don't work. Let's start with what are the things that actually work. And can you
Exactly.
imagine if we had feedback
Exactly.
conversations or talent management or managerial one-to-ones,
Yeah.
starting with this, that your manager asks you, so tell me, what are the things that work for you right now?
I have to share with you as well because I was over International Women's Day
Hmm.
doing an evening of amplifying women in business. And one of the things I was asking everybody is, let's start with success. What are the things you've been most proud about
Hmm.
in the last year? And they were all, and they were ultimately coming up saying, oh yes, oh yes. And when one started, it was, oh yes, oh yes. And then we were talking about what kind of things challenge us, and everyone was putting their hands up. And I said, isn't it scary that we are so good at concentrating and focusing on what's not quite right and where our challenges are? And it's important to know where they are and how we can obviously overcome them. But I find it so sad that we spend more time on that than thinking about our successes. And I think a lot of that is because our strengths enable us to get things done, we're so accepting of them. And we just assume everyone does what we do. And so we just think, yeah, whatever, we got that done, it's done. Now let's move on to the next thing. But actually, we need to kind of stop sometimes and just say, what did I do just then? Look what I just did then. Wow, that's a win, right? And what I tend to do actually quite often is, a typical Stephen Covey thing from Seven Habits. I like to write my victory list.
Hmm.
Especially, and I do this particularly, perhaps if I'm having a bad week and I'm feeling a little bit irritated that it's not going my way, and I feel a little bit I'm getting drawn into the negatives of what's going wrong and what's not working and what I haven't achieved and what I wanted to do, then I turn it around because those are the kind of things that trigger us and make us unhappy and bug us when we're trying to sleep at night of what hasn't worked. And oh my days, we can get sucked into that downward spiral. So, what I like to do is write a victory list and put on it the little wins I've had in my day and in my week. And at the end of the week, you actually see you've done a hell of a lot more right things and good things than you allow yourself to remember. And I find it a really great motivational tool to use, especially when perhaps our week might not be quite as wonderful as we would have liked.
Yeah. And you know what? This is the approach that entrepreneurs, I started to talk to more about, talk with entrepreneurs, small and bigger companies. And I started to see my analytical, I started to see a pattern of behavior. And what they do is literally see what works at the moment on the market, the trend, the tool, the social media, whatever, and they ride that until it doesn't work. And they are okay with it. So they
Yeah.
really looking at these entrepreneurs, looking at not what can I fix myself, but what works that I have done. So let's ride that horse as long as it's possible, as long as it yield result. And after that, we find another one.
Very good.
And
Yeah,
it's
very good.
such an
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
way of approach, which we are not taught probably in organizations. But when you are out there on your own as an entrepreneur, there is no hardcore rules how you can make it
Yeah.
happen. It's literally
Yeah.
what works right now, and it
Yeah.
doesn't depend on me or even on my strengths, but on a lot of participating elements, because the environment is massive. and
Yeah.
and we don't do that in organization. What
No.
works?
I think also, it's very easy, when we're used to doing things a certain way, things fall into habits and we get stuck in that habit because we do like, let's be honest, we like instinctively what's familiar, what seems easy, what comes easy, what keeps us in our little safe place. But actually, I never like to think of this as a comfort zone because mostly it's a zone of familiarity, right? We're not necessarily comfortable there. We see things we don't like, but
Mm,
we don't always have to get out and change it. And it's taking that step out of where we need to be. But I think this is I think people who do a lot of the entrepreneurial stuff, you have to think fast. You've got to be on that. And I think in an organization, sometimes it's where we knock it out of each other because we
mhm.
follow the system. And, we kind of get comfortable. But we've got to learn to be a little less comfortable because often those things are not wonderful. We've just got used to it a certain way. And it's making tiny changes. I think that's the key. Is people think they've got to make some grand gesture and do something very different. But in fact it's not. It's tiny little wins, tiny little ways to move ourselves out of that. Thinking about where our successes have been and little actions we can take to make small steps forward until we find we've actually made quite a big jump overall.
Absolutely. And let's talk about, because it's very much related, that I don't know if you find challenges when talking to organizational leaders implementing the strengths based culture. Because sometimes I find a little bit of a push, and I have a feeling
Yeah.
that they are not against the strengths based, what we can bring to the conversations, that the system, the performance evaluation, the performance management, the whole thing.
Yeah.
What they are scared of is the amount of effort, and is related to what you just said, is the amount of effort that it would take for them to manage people differently, to manage the organization differently. They like to stay in their comfort zone, right? Because we know that, and your brain obviously goes to, you know what, we already figured this out. It's not perfect, but you don't need to deal with that because it's not an imminent threat to whatever there is. And I think this is the underlying cause that organizational leaders push back not only against strengths based people development or talent development, but anything that requires change because of the effort.
Yeah, I think that's really true. But you know, I guess you and I will always come from the same base because we are passionate about and have learnt what we can achieve when we work from strength. But to me, you know, I'm a maximizer. I like to take good to great, but you can't change something that you don't know.
Mhm.
So, firstly, when we talk about self awareness, this is where it all stems from. If we are not all being able to unravel who are we, each of us, what do we bring to the table? At the end of the day, we are all brought in. For those of you, anybody who works in business, in any business, people hire you because of the value you bring, not for what you don't do. So the thing is, how do you get clear on what you do bring? And most people don't know because we don't think about it. And the wonderful thing with starting with strengths is once you have an idea, clear idea of the raw materials that you have within your organization, your teams, then you can start saying, aha, what do we do with this? What do we need to do with this? Are they in the right sort of role right now? What might they need to support them? What do they, where can we see where, you know, they might be ticking the competencies box, but my goodness, they can add real value in X, Y, and Z. How do we build their experiences and their training and their education around that? And this are the things that, you know, to just send people on training courses is fine, but you're not getting true return on investment because you don't know if it's actually going to be working for that person in the right way. Just sending leaders on a leadership training is always going to be beneficial to a degree. But let's talk about what kind of leader you are. As a leader, you're not going in there to buy a load of characteristics and try to be something you're not. It's about saying, this is who I am. This is what I know I'm really good at. This is where I believe that I can bring my authentic leadership style in. And because of my style, I will know that I can't always just expect that my style is going to suit everyone all the time. So let me figure out that if my style is not appropriate, where might it not be? And what might I need to do to compensate for that? How do I help myself so that I'm getting the best impact for my people around me? And it's the same for the teams. And once people do this, it's being able to rely on each other. Yeah. I mean, I remember many years, hundreds of years ago, my career started at Harrods in London. And I was managers of big departments, such as perfumery and cosmetics, for example, at one point, where I think that we had about 500 staff. And I remember, you know, being able to go in and say to people, look, here's the thing. This is what I know I'm good at. Here's where I've got your back. But I am absolutely useless at this, and this. Now, who here knows how to do that? And
Exactly.
people say, "Why can I?" Think, "Oh, great, we've got it covered." And that's how we do it. This is where we combine strengths. We work. We do not need to do it all, but we can't begin to know any of those things unless we're truly self-aware. And this is where strengths, to start with strengths and get a clear understanding of what your raw material is, then you know how to position it in the right way.
Totally agree. And I had this conversation many, many times that where are the people from these leadership development programs? Because that should be this number one step, right? The first step. Who are you? And I do that through the strength assessment. Really, what do you bring to the table? And I also do that through personality assessment. I work with the big five because that gives a very different aspect to the person,
Oh, it
both
really does. I've done mine, and honestly, it quite terrified me.
you need to send it to me. We need to have a chat about that. But it really it also links into to the strengths, but it's really it gives you this picture of look, this is who I am. What am I going to do with this? How am I going to lead with that? How am
Yeah.
I going to lead with if I'm dominant, my dominant strength is analytical? How can my team use that strength of mine? How can I do that when I'm an influencer, a relationship, whatever that is? Because those different domains will really outline and show you how you going to manage and lead people and how you going to think, right? But when we don't have that, we're not giving this tool to people to know themselves. And I really don't know why. I really don't know why we use a framework, a random framework. Here is Laura. Here is the good framework. It came from HBR. They are fantastic. They are reliable. They studied thousands of leaders, tens of
Yeah.
thousands, and now you use it for yourself. Okay, but I'm not one of those tens of thousands of leaders. I don't know how to use it. And this is where leadership development program fails, because we want people to follow a 5-step model, a
Yeah.
framework, and
Yeah.
they don't know how to fit. It's like fitting the square peg in the round hole, and that's what we are doing.
And I think more than that, you know what? I thought, as I said earlier, I thought I knew my strengths. I'm a speaker, communication high. I motivate. I do this. I influence. I'm good at executing stuff. Always done all these things. Thought I nailed it, as I said, until I had my accident. Now, I'm not saying to anybody, go out and, completely smash your body to get an aha. But honestly, what it made me do, and this is where it really brought it to mind, is I was not aware of what I was doing to be so resilient. I started working when I came out of the high dependency ward. I gave my first training completely smashed in a wheelchair 11 weeks after my accident. I've traveled around the world on crutches, in casts, you name it, because originally they were thought they'd have to amputate my feet. I'd never walk again, and I'm doing all of that. Still sitting here in a cast, mind you, after this latest surgery, but I'm getting stuff done. But the point is, I even shocked myself by not recognizing what I was doing. And I thought, me particularly, I'm a trainer. I teach all these things. How come I don't know? It's ridiculous. And so that's why I went and studied positive psychology and resilience and optimism and strengths and appreciative inquiry. And it made me realize that one, we really need to know that when we're challenged over and over, that we have a strategy that we can rely on, because it's horrible when you're in that awful place and you need something you can cope with. But when I did my strengths, that was the hugest aha, because when I saw what it was, I thought, of course I know that. But yes, it wasn't really conscious to me that I was using those things. And yet when you suddenly, it's brought to your attention, you suddenly think, one, of course I do that. But if I was doing that without realizing and getting this kind of result, how cool is it now if I can absolutely call those things to mind and optimize the behaviors around that? Because now I can leverage those strengths and actually get a better outcome. And for me, it has done well. I would not be. Apparently I'm a medical phenomenon. I'm achieving things that are not possible, but they are. The thing is, it's just about knowing our strengths and recognizing how we can use them. And that's what makes me so passionate, because like everyone else, I just thought, oh, strengths, yeah, we've all got them and I use them. But you have no idea their real power until, for me, I was in this space. And if anyone had asked me before my accident, God, are you this strong, this resilient? I would say, yeah, not me. I don't think so. So we have no idea, but this is where strength comes in. And when you recognize the power that's behind understanding that in self-awareness, it's such a huge tool. You don't need anything else.
Understanding those strengths, they really help you to make decisions,
100.
career decisions. I know people that they are misguided during the career because they have no idea what they bring to the table.
Yeah.
Because who they are. And people, when you don't know who you are, you're just gonna go with what anybody else is telling you. For example, oh, you should be this, you should be that. I have been told so many times, you should be a hotel general manager. I'm like, this is perhaps the last thing I would like to do in my entire. I'd rather work in McDonald's behind the cashier. I don't know why, but that is not an appealing thing for me. But when you start understanding, and also I have a client, and he's very high on positivity and other strengths, that really just going with the flow kind of person, and no really goal setting anywhere in his top 10, just let's be in the flow. And he realized after a few hours of conversations that it's not really serving him. It gives you great flexibility, which is great, When can I deploy that? What are the circumstances? So I need to be aware of that, that I have great, flexibility. But also, he never really managed to achieve anything he wanted in his life,
Yeah.
because at the moment he set a goal, okay, I want to buy a house, whatever it is, something came along and diverted him because he's so easygoing.
Yeah.
This is
Absolutely.
when your strength actually hurts you, because you never get to go to that goal or reach that destination. So understanding this, how my strengths can benefit me and hurt me, etc., etc., and then he realized, and then he went through a little bit of assertiveness training, just to balance that out. But knowing how to compensate and how to use those strengths is the most fascinating. I told you the story in my university, right? That we had to do the SPSS exam. And I'm super good with exam. I'm a learner, like give me everything. But SPS is the moment you tell me numbers, I'm done. Like
I'm there with you. Yeah.
I'm on the plane and I'm flying. Like I don't want to deal with it. So my mind went like, oh my God, I'm gonna fail this. There's no way I'm going to do it. There's no way. So then I was like, okay, Sylvia, but you are a learner.
Yeah.
You can learn anything. You give me anything, I can learn. So I spent weeks and weeks and weeks learning the system, the SPSS system, sitting in the university lab and the computer room, learning step by step. Literally, my photogenic mind, went straight away. I took pictures. I'm like, okay, I can do that even if you wake me up at 2 a.m. Guess what? My exam was the highest graded distinction. And the following year, my professor called me to go and have a lecture, give them for the first year students how to prepare for the SPSS exam. Not how to do the exam, but I know that, because I don't know. To ask me today how to do it, I have no idea. How to prepare. And that's what I'm really good at. I'm gonna study, I'm gonna understand, and I'm going to look at every single aspect of it.
Yeah.
Now, how do you bring that knowledge to the table? When was the last time that your manager asked you? And once I had a coach, Laura, and you will love this question. And wouldn't it be amazing if organizations could ask that question? How does your top five influence the way you are fulfilling your role? It
Great
takes
question.
time.
It really does. But do you know something? And that's a great question. And you know what was so frightening for me, in a way, is over COVID, when so many people were obviously at home, and now we're thinking in a very different way because of the remote scenarios that we all had to be in. I have never had more senior leaders coming for coaching than I have in my entire life. And why? As you say, we normally, not everyone knows their purpose at a very young age or knows what they want to do, but most of us go into something because we're fascinated by it, or we love it, or we're interested, and we kind of choose a career based around that. But yet, what tends to happen? Most of us find over the years, particularly the more senior you get, you wear so many different hats, you play so many roles, and you pull yourself in so many directions that even though you're achieving everything that needs to happen, you've kind of divorced yourself quite often from where you felt your impact was, where you felt your purpose was. And this is what I found over COVID. So many leaders had completely forgotten what they wanted, why they wanted it. And they're now managing directors, CEOs, and they're thinking, but why am I not feeling fulfilled? What am I missing? And this is because they've moved away from their strengths and their talents and where they truly add value to do a bit of everything. And so it's really, really important to get back into, why is it I want to do this? Where do I add value? How can I build myself, extend where I'm going? Because I get leaders who say, no, I've done it all. I'm at the top of my game. I don't need to do any more. I've already reached my potential. I'm there. Pardon? We have to keep growing. There are people waiting to take our jobs. You know, we can keep learning. The world is changing every 5 minutes. We need to stay current. So it is still saying, Are you, if you're a senior leader listening to this today, are you really using your strengths? Are you being the really authentic leader that you should be? Or are you trying to be a bit of everything? Because we know if we do everything, it's just mediocrity. We don't stand out as an expert in anything. We're not recognized. And we all want to create, come on, we all want to create some kind of legacy. That's why we do what we do. So the thing is how do we want to do that? And it has to start with self-awareness. It has to start with strengths.
It is self-awareness. It is all about self-awareness. And yes, I had these kind of conversations with leaders that they are good at everything. I'm like, okay. And even their bottom five, they just dispute. No, no, absolutely. I'm good at those ones as well. It cannot be this. All of them are my strengths. I'm like, okay. So whoever is listening, and when that goes through your head, first of all, I would question self-awareness, and also ask yourself the question, how those, maybe you are very good at doing them, but how do they make you feel?
Yeah.
How do they make you feel? And this is when you realize what is your strength. Yesterday I had a beautiful moment, Laura, with one of my ex-colleague. He used to be the beverage manager for us, and we had a conversation last year. He was not really in his elements, and you could see, the posture of people will tell you everything about how they feel. And we had a conversation how he could get to corporate office and work on corporate and da, da, da. So it was just like, but I didn't want to tell him a lot. I'm like, are you sure that this is your, that's the place that
Calling.
you, yeah, that's your happy place? And based on his character and everything, is not his. I knew that, and so nothing worked out. He left, and now he's in another company, doing what he's really good at. And yesterday he was posting pictures, videos on Instagram behind the bar in Doha, making fantastic cocktails, training the staff, and entertaining the guests like 1,000 person people event. And I messaged him. I'm like, this is your happy place. I'm like, this is what you're supposed to do, not the corporate office job that requires you to do none of this.
Yeah.
And when we understand that, you know what, this makes me happy, it might not give me the title,
Yeah.
right? Because we are living in a very title oriented world.
Yeah,
And
unfortunately.
completely detached from self-awareness, because if I know what makes me happy, I'm not going to go for the title. I'm going to go for what suits my personality, my strengths, my whoever I am, intrinsically speaking. And I think the workplaces would be much better places, because then you would find a perfect match of the role and the person, rather
Yeah.
than we just have there are people trying to match themselves to the role, but that's just not working like that, and then we wonder
And
why
it,
we have.
Sorry, and it comes down to those performance conversations, doesn't it? And I think that is what's key, because we know data proves that managers, account for 70% of the variance in engagement. So it's really, really, really important that managers actually have the right conversations. Sorry for that. The right conversations with their teams. And that's what I think sometimes is missing. We kind of get so busy doing, we forget to have the right conversations that can help us with this.
Yes. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And also the reason why, and one of the reasons why we are in the current situation in terms of leadership and work and engagement, is because we are going after the title, but we are not going after, do I actually want to do what the job entails? Because if I
Yeah.
don't want to lead people, but that comes with the title. So
Yeah.
once again, self-awareness, and it's okay to say, I don't want to lead people, because that's not where I'm really good at. That's not where I contribute.
Yes, and I think this is something that becomes very important, particularly in teams, because often I see in an organization that somebody is doing a great job, and so they're made a manager. And it doesn't mean that they have management capabilities or that they really want them. They don't want, as you say, it could be leading people. They're not necessarily focused in that, but they are very, very good in their field. So it's about looking about really about what those titles mean and how are we actually elevating people in the right way, building their development in the right way so that they can succeed at their best.
Absolutely. And that should be self awareness based development.
100%.
Here we go. We came up with the term self awareness based development, people development.
100%.
Well, Laura, I think we can close it on that note because this beautiful self awareness based development, and you can start with strengths, then you can go into so many different areas of, of life and work because that really is. That would eliminate a lot of problems that we are facing in our private lives and in the workplace as well. Well, how else would you like to close? Give us a good line to close it.
Oh, a good line to close. Oh, my days. I can't think of one. I would probably have to say, learning is continuous, change is continuous. We can always excel, and it's about really thinking about how can you invest in being your best self. What can you do this year? We know it's still hard out there. The world is still uncertain. What do you think you specifically can do to invest in yourself and your self-awareness and take yourself to a new place this year?
Absolutely. And in order to get there, study your
Mm,
successes.
100%. Always
Thank
starts
you
with
so
success.
yes. Thank you so much, Laura. It was
It's a
really
pleasure to
lovely.
chat with you. Thank you.
And speak to you soon.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.